Hey, it's good to see you again. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of See It Again Cinema. This is a episode with my good friend Heidi.
Hey, Sam.
Hey. And Heidi has selected the 1987 classic vampire film, The Lost Boys. So, what can you tell us about why you chose this film?
You know, for whatever reason, just over the years, it's just always, lingered in my mind. Just memories of how fun it was. And I don't know, when you asked me what movie, it's just the first thing that came to mind. So
yeah. Now, how old were you when you first saw the movie?
Like you mentioned, it's 1987, so I would have been 6, so I feel like more likely I saw it around 8 or 9.
What were your first impressions, seeing it as a child?
So it's rated R, so my parents weren't going to let me watch a movie like that. And so in some ways that had its own excitement. And, it was a horror film, so it was a little bit dangerous. But I don't remember ever thinking it was scary. It, just fun and funny.
When you watched it when you were young, did it give you nightmares?
Not that I recall.
Yeah.
But, I've just never in general been someone that's gotten scared of horror films, so.
Okay. Well, that makes one of us. Because when I eventually do my episode on Night of the Living Dead, it's going to be unbundling some trauma. Because I was way too young when I saw that zombie film. So, we've seen countless movies together. What are your memories of how we met and became, movie buddies?
Well, I had recently moved to Lincoln from Kearney. I was working at Blockbuster.
R.I.P.
Oh, man, that was the best job. So, anyway, I was working with your buddy and mine, Ryan, and he hosted a Christmas party, which was at your house. Mm-hmm. And so I remember meeting you that night, and you had also worked at Blockbuster. So just immediately, I just felt like we hit it off, and I just knew we'd be friends. So
there is a fraternal order of Blockbuster employees where you can meet someone who worked at Blockbuster and instantly find things to talk about. Do you remember the first movie we saw together in the theater?
So I don't know if this is the first one, but I instantly I remember going to Kinsey. The audience reaction in that film was nuts. And maybe when we have you back on the show again, that could be one we rewatch. That would be fun, because I don't think I've seen it since.
I haven't seen it since the theater either. Yeah, so, okay. Another thing that makes this episode special is this is the first time See It Again Cinema episode is a movie that I've never seen before, and Heidi's going to introduce me to it. When you think about The Lost Boys, and it's a vampire movie, what do you feel it does differently or makes it special or stand out from other movies with vampires?
I just feel like this one just fully embraces the camp. Mm-hmm. And there might be other ones out there that are like that, but not that I have seen. And so I think, I guess you see this probably in a lot of others, but you'll find that, it really leans into all the tropes and stuff like that, in a fun way. And the style. I mean, it's very 80s. And so the style, it feels a little bit more rock and roll, or at least the vampires do. And I think that's some of it too. So
you mentioned camp. Does it take place during the summer? Is it like vampires at summer camp?
Well, no, but it is in the summer, in a fictional town in California, where they have a boardwalk and a fair and stuff. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I know what you meant by camp.
No, I
was
know,
just pretending to be dumb. Now, our viewers probably don't know this, but you work with blood every day. Not as a special effects props person, but as a phlebotomist at a blood bank. What are you... when you watch a movie and there's a lot of blood in it, what do you think about when it comes to like blood in movies.
You know, so I do not love movies that have gore for gore's sake, but blood has just never like grossed me out, which is probably why I'm in the right profession. But also I'm just very aware that more often than not it looks pretty fake.
Well, it's time to begin and watch The Lost Boys again. We'll catch you after the credits roll. All right.
All right.
See it again, see it again. Cinema, 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 see it again, see it again. And then talk about it. Would you like some rice, Heidi? Would you like some maggots, Heidi? Oh, thankfully, it's actually just rice. But that was one of my favorite parts of the movie was I had no idea where that was going. And that was a lot of fun and would have grossed me out when I was a kid and grossed me out now to see the maggots and the worms.
I was going to say, was it the worms or the maggots that would... Because the worms are pretty gross.
Well, the maggots first, because I rarely see a bunch of worms. Right. But, you go to a trash canister, and sometimes on a hot summer day, and you're like, oh my God, there are maggots. So like, I'm in my life, I'm more likely to see a bunch of maggots. So that was definitely creepy. That was a lot of fun. It's been 10 years since you've seen The Lost Boys. What are some aspects of the film that rewatching it after 10 years, you've seen it multiple times before, that you noticed or appreciated this time?
Well, I just gotta say, it was a lot of fun to revisit. There's a lot. So I will say, I said beforehand that I didn't think it was scary. And I still didn't think it was scary. Partially probably just because I'm familiar with the movie. But that opening sequence could be pretty scary. And certainly for an 8 to 10-year-old, And so maybe I just misremember or I've repressed those memories,
Yeah.
Because it was definitely more terrifying than I remembered.
I imagine... When I was younger, for whatever reason, all those high school movies where kids, got, shoved in lockers and were given swirlies. I don't know why it was when I was growing up. I always assumed that kids that were a grade level or older were going to want to beat me up. And so when I would walk down a street or something, if I saw slightly older kids, I don't know why I thought that I should be threatened by them. It's weird. It's like I grew up on the hard streets of Scotts Bluff, I did come with the territory, but that opening sequence on the merry-go-round or is that what it was with the horses or what's the carousel.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the carousel, they do a good job at making sure those 4 young, hoodlums look really menacing. So that was something that I kind of noticed is how quickly they established and made them look like they were a Los Angeles hair metal band.
Yeah.
So, okay. So maybe thinking about this, you were wondering why when you were younger, scenes that probably would scare a little kid didn't scare you. Maybe, even though horror isn't your favorite genre, maybe you're just tougher
Maybe.
Maybe that's why you didn't like horror, because it didn't actually scare you.
It was boring.
Yeah. Real life was more terrifying.
I mean, that's the truth. I mean, it really is. So, yeah, I think it's just, if horror is done in a, it can be a little bit more realistic. But a lot of horror films, I don't think are meant to be that realistic. And because of that, I'm able to remove myself from the terror.
Yeah.
I don't take it with me, I guess, so.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say that I've never watched a movie late at night and then heard noises and thought.
Yeah.
But it would be more likely coming from, a serial killer movie or something like that than a horror film. So.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned how much The Lost Boys is a film of its time, that it's very 80s in the right kind of ways. If this film and the idea behind it were made today or remade, what do you think the producers or the creative people involved or the studio would do differently if they were to...
I don't necessarily know that, this would be for the better, but, one of the things I do love about the movie is it's an hour and a half, I suppose the plot is still a little limited, so I wonder if they would try to add anything to that.
Maybe more backstory stuff to to Star's character.
Who do you think would be it? I'd be interested to see who they cast.
Zendaya.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'd probably have Zendaya.
Do you think they would actually want to reverse it and make it a female forward?
I've been hearing for years that they're planning to make a reverse gender Lord of the Flies, where it's a plane of girls that crashes on an island. Mm-hmm. So I could see them doing something like The Lost Girls. Mm-hmm. But it's really funny. There was only one moment where I was like, oh yeah, The Lost Boys. It's a Peter Pan thing. And that's where, after the initiation, the bonfire on the beach scene, when David is talking to Michael's character and says, you live forever, but you've got to feed. You've got to hunt, for whatever. That's when I was like, okay, maybe there's a cost to staying young forever and living forever.
So, we haven't discussed this, but just now thinking about the correlations we picked up on with Jim Morrison, which I had never picked up on before.
Yeah, that's something I noticed early on in the film, was when I heard People Are Strange. I'm a big Doors fan, and I quickly realized it's not the original version. That's not Jim Morrison's voice. And I began to say, oh, that planted the seed in my mind that Michael looks... the hairstyle and his kind of brooding manner, like he's supposed to be Jim Morrison. And then later on, they have a big poster of Jim Morrison in the vampire cave, the vampire hotel. Yeah, so you noticed a couple different, references to other pop culture things as we were watching the film?
Yeah. I picked up a lot of stuff that I just, maybe 10 years ago, or certainly not, 30 years ago, I would have thought to, or this would have never occurred to me. But even the Molly Ringwald picture from Breakfast Club, I think there's some stuff to explore there, too. Yeah,
a lot of the other references were older, pulpier things, I can't remember, the prison girl reformatory thing, or girls in prison post, I can't remember, or the Munsters. And I thought, why Molly Ringwald? Because The Breakfast Club, it was a financial success because they filmed the entire movie in 2 days. It wasn't an expensive movie, but...
That's wild.
Yeah, or Molly Ringwald and Rob Lowe. And the design of the boys' bedroom was fun.
I think again, it's just, I think it's a little crazy to see something like that part makes it very based in reality of that year.
Yes.
You know, which you don't, I think you rarely see that.
You think that things that are of the year that they are made, you know, earlier, this is a good, interesting idea, because earlier you talked about how when the pandemic hit, suddenly all we really wanted was comfort and familiarity. And a lot of times when we see something that's supposed to be comfortable and familiar now, it seems like it's loaded with references to the past. And I rarely see something where the things that are being included, whether it's the songs, the fashion, the whatever, the posters, or the current references, if it's a movie, it doesn't seem like it's referencing anything that's of the contemporary culture.
Right, exactly, yes.
I wonder if that's because a lot of filmmakers, and there's just so much stuff with so many different streaming shows, so many video games, so many subgenres and microgenres of music, that the idea of referencing something, the chances are that someone's actually going to get the contemporary reference is so low that it's safer to reference something that's established and like has stood the test of time.
Yeah, I agree.
That might be the reason for it.
And already immediately introduces nostalgia, which is always like something that can create an emotional attachment to something.
Yeah, that's what I thought was neat about this film, and why I don't know how well it did at the box office, because I had never seen it before and don't know a lot about the film, but I didn't sense that this film was trying to harken back to an earlier time period. I didn't feel like it was a nostalgic call. Like, I don't feel like it had a lot of callbacks to any particular genre. I mean, yeah, there are vampires in the movie, but it didn't seem like it was trying to have, like, you know how a Tim Burton film has overt gothic, like, we're going to have lightning and a thunderstorm and, you know, whatever. It just...
I will say that isn't that kind of what Joel Schumacher does? Like, he just kind of just... I mean, I don't know that he has a style. Like, I think he just...
Yeah, other than... I think some people think he can be pretty campy. And I went into this because you mentioned the camp aspect. And I was kind of expecting it to be campier than it was. Like, I actually felt that this was kind of restrained as compared to something like his Batman and Robin, which is much derided, but... I
almost feel like, though, too, again, maybe some of the reason that that's in my brain is because it feels very much from 1987, so maybe I'm just assigning, like, camp onto something that's more just a film from the 80s and, has the style of the 80s. So, I spoke to that I didn't think it was very scary. What did you think of it as a horror film, I guess?
I know what creeped me out and what scared me and gave me nightmares as a kid. I don't think this film would have scared me that much. And that's not to say that I didn't, appreciate what they're doing. It's strange, but I often don't think of vampire movies as horror films. I think of them more as creature films, or like where it's more about something about the special effects related to their supernatural powers. When I think of horror, I often think of slasher films, or something where they're so I often think of this. It seems like it's more, there's in the Venn diagram of the world of cinema, I think that horror and vampire can overlap, but this just seemed like more of a almost like a family-friendly
Thriller?
vampire film.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Well,
I don't know, and I think it's because of the character of Diane, the mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she... Something about her, I mean, she seemed like Sally Fields could have been in that role. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like more of a family film than a horror film. Mm-hmm. Now, if there had... I know there's a scene where the dog chases her, but I kind of also think, like, it could have been way more terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, or if something more threatening or terrifying had happened to her, then I would have been like, oh, yeah, that film went to some dark, twisted places. But it didn't. It seemed like it was more just for the thrills. Like,
yeah.
like Michael Jackson's Thriller. Like, the movies they're talking about, it's more of a thriller than a horror film. Mm-hmm. Even though there are certain thrills to horror films. Horrors. Horror is always
the worst word.
I always try to overpronounce horror because I don't want it to sound like horror. Okay, so your transition was about.
Well, I was just thinking, like you could get to that point when I talked about if you saw it as a horror film, we could talk about how like there's really actually like a limited amount of violence.
There is,
and that most likely today. This would not be an R-rated film.
I completely think that if this same film and cut was sent to the MPAA, it would get a hard PG-13 rating.
I'm not even sure if there's a single F word in it.
No, language-wise, there's almost no cussing.
I think it's damn is the only thing.
Yeah, and Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Which was really funny when... and what I think is interesting about this is when I'm thinking about an R-rated moviegoer in the late 80s seeing this film, it seems so strange to have the Coreys as the Frog Brothers that seemed so like it's now I don't know if this is cynical or just accurate, but I kind of feel that once the PG-13 creation was made, and a lot of people in Hollywood had operated under the rated G, PG, and R-rated and rated X, when those were the only 4 categories. I think there was a lag time of the people who are making the movies who are like, come on, once the video rental market happened, they're like, oh, yeah, like 10-year-olds are totally going to see this R-rated movie. Mm-hmm. It's almost... They knew that it would affect the box office, but I think when they were looking at the video rental revenue, which was exploded in the 80s, I think that they were... You know, the Sam and the Edgar and Alan Frog, which was fun... Those seemed like they were included specifically because they knew children would be watching this film.
Now, I will say, too, like, you immediately got excited when he went into a comic book store.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, part of that is when I was a kid, comics were so nerdy and uncool. Would you like some more?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Here you go. It's not blood.
Cheers.
Cheers. So, in 6th grade, I got really into buying comics. 1993 was one of the best years for a young comic book fan. And when I would go to the mall and buy my comic books at Copperfield Books off of the spinner rack, and I would pay for them, I would ask for a non-see-through bag. I would ask for the solid black plastic bag because I was afraid that somebody from school would see me in the mall and I would have like comic books. So that's how much shame I had related to being a comic book fan. This weird like self-loathing nerd thing that I would ask for the bags that were usually reserved for Playboy or Penthouse. And so it was very strange to see all of the things that I used to buy that are now mainstream, like comic book stuff. There aren't a lot of movies, Hollywood movies, that depict comic book culture. I can probably name them on my hand, the ones I've seen. Now this movie, Lost Boys, Mallrats, True Romance by Quentin Tarantino. Oh, we got a guest.
It's just weird.
Well, all right. That'll do it for this episode of See It Again Cinema, where old movies make magical new memories. Heidi, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. And check out The Lost Boys. It's totally worth seeing again. And thanks for rewatching. See it again, see it again. Cinema, see it again, see it again. Cinema, see it again, see it again. Cinema. Cheers. We will live forever, for it is blood. No, it's wine.